Okay, here we go. So I came across a piece of Torah. You talk about hashgacha pratas. You talk about divine providence. So I don't know what possessed me to open the Sefer. I don't know why, but I opened it up and I found something that not only, of course, is about Purim, which is a week from today. Today is Zayin Adar. Today is the yahrzeit of the birth date and yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu. According to some, they say it's also the yahrzeit of Esther Hamalka. I'm not sure how we know that for sure, but some people say that. And this piece, of course, talking about Purim, but also talks exactly, I'm going to show it to you, I'm going to read it with you inside, I'll put it on the screen, exactly the pasuk that we're learning. Right, so we left off, before we get to the angel's appearance, which I was planning to move on to, and then I came across this, I said, there's no way I can't do this. The last thing we saw is Vayishbos Haman mimacharas ba'achlam me'avor haaretz. The last thing we saw was the cessation of the mun. So there was no more mun coming in, okay? Now, I always, because like the way I look at words and acronyms and things like that, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and I always wondered if, when it says, anytime it says Haman, if it's any reference to Haman. It's really hard to find a connection, but oh boy, did I find a connection. And this is just unbelievable. So with all this buildup, it's like, it better be good because, to me, it's good. So the Gemara in Megillah has a question that says, Haman min haTorah minayin. They try to find, and it goes through Esther, Mordechai, where is there a scriptural hint to Haman? What that means is, where can we find a connection? So interestingly enough, it doesn't pick Haman like with man, Yaman. It picks Hamin ha'etz in the beginning of Bereshis, after Adam and Chava eat from the tree from which they are not supposed to eat. It says Hamin ha'etz, did you eat from the tree from which you were not supposed to have eaten? But he used the word is Hamin, but it's the same letters, Hamin, Haman. So it's very cute. But what's the connection? So traditionally, the Chazal, the way we explain it is that Adam and Chava had one job, or you had one prohibition. You can do whatever you want. You can have anything you want. Just, don't eat from that tree. It's like if you leave your kids alone, you say, whatever you do, don't go in the cookie jar. Whatever you do, don't open that closet. So the first thing they're going to do is open that closet. Because if you say, this is the one thing you can't do. So they were told one thing you can't do, and that's eat from the tree. So Haman had everything in the world. He had everything going. He was the second in command. But because one Jew wouldn't bow down to him, because Mordechai, and he didn't even notice, if you look at the psukim carefully, he didn't even notice it at first. It was sort of pointed out to him, and then he's like, oh yeah, Taka, this guy won't bow down to me, which we've looked at in the past. But because he had everything and he threw his whole world upside down because of one thing that he couldn't have, that's the connection. So that's where the Gemara makes the connection. So I'm going to show you, this is a piece from Rav Shulzinger, who is the Rav in Gilo. If you know Gilo in Yerushalayim, in the south, if you ever go to, let's say, Kenyon Malcha, right? Malcha Mall. I remember when the mall was already a big deal when it was first built. Now it's like, you have to go to the mall. But if you go down like by Malcha and Teddy Stadium, and you head now towards the Gush, which now they have the beautiful road, that it's finished, it goes all the way there. But there's an area there that runs alongside an Arab town, which is called Beit Jala, which borders on Bethlehem. So if you drive into Gilo, so for instance, if you ever had girls that went to seminary in Amit seminaries in Gilo, there were yeshivas in Gilo, but there was a whole period of time which led to the building of the security wall, actually, and the security fence, is where the residents of Beit Jala were just randomly shooting into the neighborhood of Gilo. And it became such a terrible, menacing thing that people couldn't go outside of their houses. As a matter of fact, Rav Shulzinger in his Sefer, he has a whole question about what, on that year on Sukkot, what to do if you couldn't sit in your sukkah outside because they're worried about getting shot at. Just think about that. Okay. So this is Rav Shulzinger. So I'm going to share with you this piece that I came across completely by accident, but then again, nothing is by accident. Okay, see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So look at this. I'm going to move everything to the top a little bit. Okay, perfect. Okay. U'bnei Yisrael alchu es Haman 40 shana. Kach nemer b'Torah HaKadosha, u'bnei Yisrael alchu et Haman 40 shana ad bo'am al eretz noshaves. So in Shemos, when the man is given, this is Ted Zion. So it's an interesting verse because I'll just pull it up for you. In Shemos 16, this is in Parashas B'Shalach. 16:35, and it says that the Jewish people, they ate the man 40 years until they came to the land, and they ate it until they came to the El Kitzei, until the border of the land of Israel. Okay, so we have a lot to deal with, because remember we discussed last week what happened if since Moshe died and there was a period when they were no longer with Moshe, and if the man came in his merit, and then also if it came in his merit, what happened those times afterwards? It says they had leftover, or they had a stockpile, whatever, even though it wasn't supposed to be stockpile. Okay, that's a question we looked at Rabag. What's interesting is that in Parashas B'Shalach, we already get sort of a preview. We're told that they ate the man for 40 years. Now, in this point of B'Shalach, this just shows you is that when B'Shalach is written, it's written not in real time, because, or you could argue that, because in B'Shalach, there's no decree of 40 years yet. They just got out of Egypt. They just came into the Midbar. It doesn't happen for another year that we have the decree of the 40 years, or the remaining 40 years, because of the story of the Meraglim. But yet here, the pasuk itself tells us that here, that they ate it for 40 years. Okay, fine. Now let's see the Gemara. He says, Isa b'Gemara Kedushin. The Gemara tells us in Daf Lamed Ches, V'chi 40 shana achlu, v'halo 40 shana chaser shloshim yom achlu. What do you mean they ate it for 40 years? Wasn't it 40 years minus 30 days? The Gemara has a whole conversation there, because if Moshe Rabbeinu died 30 days before they went in, or maybe the question is 30 days before when they came out of Egypt. Didn't happen right away. But whatever it is, the Gemara has an answer that it says that they had something to eat. They had ugos, they had something they took from Mitzrayim, and they had with it the taste of man. They were man-like. So what did man taste like?
Dvash.
It's a dvash, tzbichus a dvash.
I thought it was anything you wanted.
Correct.
Whatever you wanted.
Right. That's the tradition, is that man tasted whatever you wanted it to taste like, which means that it was tofu.
No, not exactly.
Yeah, I don't eat tofu either. It's just there has to be a category of food where, like, people are like, I'm gluten free, this, and I'm tofu free. Like I'm a tofudian or whatever. I don't know. You make it up, but I won't eat it. Anyway, Od move the Gemara Sham. The Gemara continues. The pasuk says is that they ate the man 40 years until they came to the land where they settled, Eretz Noshavet. And then it says, however, also to the border of the land. So how could it be that they went to Eretz Noshavet to eat the man? Because it says only until the border of the land. And you can't say they only ate it to the border, because they said they ate it until they came into the land. HaKetzad. So what does it mean? B'shiva ba'adar meis Moshe. This is today. On the 7th of Adar, Moshe died. Upasak man mile raid, and the month stopped coming down. And they would use whatever man they had left over. So this is based on what we saw last week, that they had some left over. So they had from the 7th of Adar to the 16th of Nisan. So that's roughly 5.5 weeks, whatever it might be. Okay, so it's about 5 weeks of man leftovers. This is the first time where the man leftovers actually worked, even though the whole institution of the man was usually centered around the fact that you couldn't over collect. You took your portion.
But is this something that's considered to be miraculous? Because that's a very long time period. I mean, how much could they have actually collected on that last day for it to have lasted 5.5 weeks? Or is it that, the oil that lasted 8 days kind of thing?
I don't know. I mean, unless they were given instructions that they had to, listen, we're going to be traveling light for a while, so you're going to have to stock up. I don't know, or maybe more came in. Maybe, look, the money in and of itself is miraculous. So it could be that maybe more came in and said, oh, here's your portion to take. Or I don't know, it's whatever it is miraculous. I mean, the money obviously in and of itself is miraculous. So, so it has to be.
I would like to never have to go to ShopRite again and to just have mun every day.
Well,
I'm just saying.
The Pesach aisle is out.
I know it is, but I'm just conceptually, I like the idea of walking out my front door and collecting and coming back in.
Okay. I hear that. Okay. We could open a store like, mun. Like, what's for dinner today? Mun surprise. Mun a la mun. Okay. Anyway. So anyway, but this is an important date, the 16th of Nisan. V'achein kach mivur b'Yehoshua, and this is our pasuk. Vayishbos haman mimacharas. Hainu shel marachas macharas haPesach pasuk haman l'reit. So the month stopped the next day, and we know that because what's the next day? Because they brought the carbon Pesach on the 14th. The 15th is the first day of Pesach, and then it says the next day the month stops. So the month stops on the 16th of Nisan. 14th is Erev Pesach, 15th is Pesach, 16th is the first day after the first day of Pesach, first day of Chol Hamoed. I don't know if they, obviously they kept only one day in Israel. There's the original 1 dayers. Okay. And they didn't even own land yet in Israel, and they kept 1 day. See that? There's your proof. If you go, people ask me all the time, what about you? You go to Israel, I just say keep 1 day. 1 day of Yantif, and the story I love to share, which I'm sure I've told you 100 times, but I like saying it 101 times, is when Mrs. Halpern, she should live me well, she told me that when she and her late husband Sam Halpern, Zichrono Livracha, were in Israel always for Yantif, and then Rav Goren used to visit them. And she would say that Rav Goren, they would keep 2 days of Yantif in the hotel, and Rav Goren said to him, "Don't bring your gullus to Israel." Right? Don't. I like there's something to that. Yeah, I do think it should be as simple as if you're in Israel, keep 1 day no matter what, and if you're in America, you keep 2 days no matter what. It should be that simple, but we like to complicate things. Anyway, I digress. So the month stops is on the 16th. B'meshech hadoros hafach yom zeh lemashmeuti ba'arichat seuda miuchedes k'vi shivur halon. Over time, he says, over generations, some people actually make a very specific seuda. So you're talking about on the 16th, which for us would be the second day of Yantif, or if you're in Israel, the first day of Chol Hamoed, they make a special meal because that's the day that the month stopped. So if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because we're no longer having this miraculous food, and now we have to prepare our own food to mark that occasion, which we know the exact date now. We have a special meal to mark that date. So Rachel's preparing a special mun tacos. Okay. They're not, that's real meat you're using though, right?
Chicken.
Okay, let's take it's not like fake, what do they call that thing?
No, beyond crumbles, nothing like that. It's chicken.
Beyond. I would do beyond a CR word, but not ending with umbles with a different word. But that's, I'm being recorded now, so I can't say that. But yeah, it's not, you should know from me that the 9 days is a very challenging time. Very, very hard because I can't eat dairy. I mean, I like dairy. I happen to like dairy. I just can't eat it physically. And I can't eat meat. So we finish a lot of Gemara. Okay, here we go. B'tekufas gezeras Haman harasha. Right, so we started on this page, Kof Beis. It goes on in the time of Haman. Now let's go to this is found, by the way, in a Purim section of a Sefer. He writes he has Sefarim on Chumash, which are phenomenal, and he has one Sefer called Moadei Kadshecha, which you see the title on top, which is on the various holidays. So in the time of Haman, Biksha Esther mi Mordechai sheyoreh Yehudim latzum shlosha yamim. So in the story, and by the way, this is important, we point this out all the time also, is that the story is called the story of Esther, Megillat Esther. If I were to ask you who's the main player, so the answer should be like the answer that to everything that I ask you is, well, it depends. Meaning, at what point in the story is who the main player? Because in the first 3 chapters, Esther is not the main player. Things are happening to her. Mordechai instructs her what to do, what to say, what not to say, what to reveal, what not to reveal. It's only afterwards when Mordechai says to her those monumental words that, you know what, who knows if this is the only reason why you were chosen to be the queen. And if not, if you remain silent, if you are quiet, you know what, God will find another messenger, another savior. At that point, you could see an entire paradigm shift in the Megillah where she takes control. And she says, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to tell Mordechai. And this is what you're going to do. And everybody, she says, V'tsumo alai, v'al tochlu v'al tishtu shloshes yamim v'layla v'yom, shloshes yamim layla v'yom, gam ani v'narasai etzumkein. You, everybody in the house is going to fast for 3 days. And I'm now going to go to the king without permission. And if I lose out, I lose out. And here the Gemara has an interesting drasha also, because they said that she actually went willingly. When she went willingly, they weren't going to play pinochle, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay, which up until now she was doing against her will, which is what allowed her to sort of be in this position of purity, because it was against her will. But this time it says she does it. We read that with the nigun echa, because some say the Gemara says that she was married to Mordechai, and now that she's going willingly to Achashverosh, she would no longer be able to be married to Mordechai in that sense. I know, kind of like ruins the, I want to dress up as Queen Esther nature of the story. And again, I refer you to Yehudim Ba'im if you really want to ruin your story of Esther. That'll ruin you forever. Okay. Anyway, she says you fast for 3 days. So of course, what happens at the end of the 3 days? She goes to the king, the party. She makes a party during that period. The Gemara says that when she goes to the party, she looks so. It says the king found her to be, found favor, and the Gemara wonders how is it possible he could find favor in her eyes. She looked like she was going to die. She hasn't eaten. She's so fat, she's so faint. She's gaunt. She's pale. Like, oh my God, she's chalishing. And all of a sudden, he's like, oh my God, look at her. She looks amazing, which is a miracle in of itself. She invites him to a party. At the party with Haman, she says, what? Come to another party. In between then, of course, is when the king can't sleep. That's Perek Vav. Balayla hu nadadosh nasa melech. He asks for the book. He realizes that nothing was done for Mordechai. He tells Haman, who's coming in to say, oh, I have the tree. I want to hang Mordechai. And he says, oh, by the way, what do we ever do for somebody who honors the king? And Haman's thinking like, oh, obviously the king wants to honor me. And he goes through the whole bit. You have to have the horse and the leading and the streets, the papa, the covet. And then finally in the triumphant, which we read it, good. Go take it, Mordechai. Haman, you lead Mordechai through the streets. Terrible. The daughter throws the garbage. She kills herself. Like all the great midrashim that we have on this. But Haman is barely getting cleaned up from this mess. And they rush him to the second party. At the second party, after that happens, Esther, she sees the sign. This is Hashem saying, this is the right time. And she spills the beans. She reveals her true identity. Haman is flabbergasted. The king is flabbergasted. He walks outside. He comes back and sees Haman is no fail. He's falling on her. And then he says, that's it, hang him. Okay, this is a very busy 3 days, all while she's fasting. So B'divrei Rashi, B'sugyas HaGemara Megillah. So Rashi, based on the Gemara and Megillah and Daf Tesvav, Ola, Ki shloshes yemei hatzom haya b'yudalid tesvav v'tezayim b'nisan. So we figured out in the Gemara, which is a phenomenal piece of the Gemara. When she told them to fast, it was Pesach, not Purim. Tanis Esther doesn't have to do with these 3 days of fasting necessarily, but she told. So just think about that they just spent 180 days partying, and then the whole decree comes out that they're going to be destroyed in Adar. She decides she has to do something about it. So this is 11 months in advance. What happens? She says to everybody, fast. Now, could you imagine if the rabbis came out and said, we have such a terrible thing going on. It's Pesach. I want you to fast on Yontif. It has to be really bad, something really, really bad for such a decree to take place. So she says to the people, fast on Erev Pesach, fast on Pesach, fast on the first day Chol HaMoed. Okay? So it comes out, we know this, the Gemara can figure out the exact dates. Yodalet Tesvav Tezayin. Yodalet is Erev Pesach, Tesvav is the first day of Pesach, Tezayin is the second day of Pesach. So already you can see where we're going with this. This is just, it's unbelievable. On the second day of her fast is when she went to make the first party with Esther, with Achashverosh and Haman. At that party, nothing happened. She said, you know what, if it pleases the king, come back tomorrow and we'll have a second party. That means on the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach, she has her second party with Achashverosh and Haman. And then, of course, you know what happens. The king, he finds out that Haman is the one who's trying to kill Esther, but more importantly, he comes back from the garden. He sees Haman falling over, and he decides that, you know what, we're going to kill Haman. Ubalayla orli yudzayin benisan nitle Haman ala eitz. So the 16th at night, going into the 17th, Haman is hanged on the tree. Have a omer b'yom shel chag Pesach, and this is the second day of Pesach. So yesh midrashim behem nemar ki Haman nitle. So we have different opinions, of course, that Haman was hanged on the 18th of Nisan, based on the Targum Sheni. Targum Sheni is one of the more popular. When we studied Megillah, we looked at it a lot. One of the more popular explanations that you'll find al adaf in any interpretation of Megillah Esther. And there's some that say that he was hanged on the 13th of Nisan. And he quotes here, Parshas David Chag HaMatzos. Lamaisa noked hashalah, he quotes in the Shnei Luchos HaBris, which is brought in the Magen Avram, Ki Haman nitle b'yom tezayin Nisan. He comes to the conclusion that Haman was hanged on the 16th of Nisan. So, hashalah. Now here's the shalah. He writes in Maseches Megillah. Mevi ki re'ei medaktikim shenogu aroch suuda b'yom tezayin b'Nisan. So he says there's a custom that people have, and they're called medaktikim. People of medaktik are people that are very particular, very, insistent on doing things a certain way. We have certain observances that take place on certain days. So for instance, today on Zayin Adar is known as sort of the national or international Chevra Kadisha Day. And it was involved in the Chevra Kadisha. Many Chevra Kadishas around the world, they establish this as a day they fast, and they have a special gathering, sort of like a continuing education of sorts, an in-service. They have a get-together, they make a siyum, and then they have a special suda afterwards. That's always picked the day of Zayin Adar, because that's the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was both born and died. Anyway, so people he says that they're medaktek, they're very careful that they would have a special suda on the 16th of Nisan. Why? Because Zecher l'Seudas Esther shehovila l'Tliyaso shel Haman. That it's funny because on Pesach we're not thinking about Purim. On Purim we're thinking about Pesach. It's one of the greatest sense of humor pieces from God of all time. It's like, okay, we're going to start thinking about getting rid of chametz and cleaning your house. Let's bring in like pounds and pounds and pounds of junk candy that after a day nobody wants to look at, and you can't even give it away because who am I going to give like 800 fizzies to? Poor people don't like that. It's not good. They don't have teeth. It's not good. They can't eat these kind of things, right? So what are you supposed to do? So, okay, I'll show you. I'll show you. Get to do. Oh yeah, well, we'll give you 800 pounds of chametz right weeks before Pesach. So in Purim we're thinking about Pesach. Pesach we're not thinking about Purim. So these people would say, no. Dafka, on the second day of Pesach, we have a special meal or something special at the meal, because this is the day that Esther and her bravery caused Haman to be hanged and prevented the destruction of the Jewish people. Which, by the way, makes sense on Pesach, because Pesach, when we talk about Hashem redeeming us from our enemies, so this is also a case where Hashem redeemed us from our enemies, and it happened on this day. Hu af mevi remez na'alakach, and he brings a beautiful hint to this. Yom lifnei kain, b'yom rishon shel Chag HaPesach, korin b'haftorah. He says, because remember we said that this part that we're learning right now in Yehoshua, it's the haftorah of the first day of Pesach. On the first day of Pesach, what do we say? Vayishbos Haman mimacharas. Vayishbos Haman. Vayishbos means that the man ceased the next day. Okay, so if you do the play on words, that on the first day of Pesach, we're saying, Vayishbos Haman. Haman went to rest. Finally, he rested, the ultimate rest, mimacharas, tomorrow on the 16th. If you're into cutesy bootsy stuff like that, this is awesome. Okay? Hapasach mitziaches l'kach, she'achar knisas b'nei Yisrael la'eretz Yisrael, paska yiridas Haman min hashemayim. The pasuk is telling us that after the Jewish people entered the land of Israel, the man stopped falling from the heavens on that day. But if you look at the play on words, if you read it carefully, there's Shivim Ponim LaTorah, 70 ways to look at and interpret the Torah. The hint is that on the 16th, Mimacharas, tomorrow, today's the 15th because it's the first day of Pesach. We're reading this Haftarah. Tomorrow, what happened? Haman's life will also Shavas, will rest. He'll have the ultimate rest. And it's the 16th of Nisan. Divrei hashalah huva lahalacha b'divrei haposkim. So this shalah is brought lahalacha in the poskim. It's brought in the Shulchan Aruch. It gives you Taf Tzadi. Hechel Magen Avraham v'kila Mishnah Berurah. So it's also in the Magen Avraham, the Mishnah Berurah, and it says Tov la'asos bayom beis b'seuda eze davar lezecher seudas Esther sheyom ze nitle Haman. And that's what he says. That on this day, on the second day of Pesach. So whether it's the second day of Yom Tov for us or it's the first day of Chol HaMoed for those in Israel, then it's a good thing. It says it's a good idea to make a special seuda. Hi, Chick. Good to see you. Part of you.
Your hand.
I see your hand. I see it's good. Give me a thumbs up. Something a little like nothing.
He's actually going out to work.
Baruch Hashem.
At the work.
Have me in mind. So it says on the second day we do something. Ezeh davar. We do something to commemorate the Seudah of Esther, should be Yom Zel, because on this day, Haman was hanged. I don't know what you do special. You could do special on Pesach. You can make like Pesach dik Hamantashen or something. I don't know how that would work out because the matzah doesn't really hold so well. You could with the lekvar or whatever it is that you use. Plus all that stuff is probably kitnias and anyway. So there's not much you could do. So I don't know. But we have no, it's not that day. It's not it's not. It's not a kreplach day either. Right? People eat kreplach. We eat kreplach on Purim. And there's two other times we eat kreplach on Hoshana Rabbah and also Erev Yom Kippur. They say that in Yiddish, it sounds much better in the Yiddish. I wouldn't embarrass my Yiddish, but they say the 3 times that you clap, that's the 3 times you eat kreplach. When you clap Haman, when you clap Al Chet, and when you clap Hoshanas. It has to do with the panemius, because those are real days of forgiveness, and also that the true inside comes out, which is hidden. Kreplach is a hidden food, okay? And then some people stole it and they called it dim sum, but the real good stuff is on the inside. That's what you're supposed to be. And it's Al Chet, we're trying to show God, you know what? The true goodness is on the inside. We're trying to bring it out. Hoshana Rabbah the same. And on Purim, of course, the true beauty, the true essence and identity comes out. Anyway, but not to do with Pesach. So maybe if you wanted to have like an additional, but there's no Pesach kreplach either. There's people like kremslach, but not kreplach. So it will be interesting. All right, let's see what he says further. Besider Yavetz. So in the Siddur of Rabbi Yaakov Emden, also when we look at customs and we look at liturgy and things like that, so we always look at the Siddur of Yaakov Emden. It says Ki bayom ze roi lilmod et seder hakravas karban haomer. He says also that this is a day that we should learn the bringing of the Omer. By the way, the Omer was brought after the first day of Pesach. So that's calendarically when it happened on the 16th of Nisan. On the one hand, it's because this was the day that it was actually brought, the Omer offering was brought in the Beis HaMikdash. And he says also because this has connection to the fall of Haman HaRasha. Now, Mapalas doesn't mean falling from the sky. Mapalas means downfall. The downfall of Haman HaRasha, not man from the sky. Right? We're already going to get confused. Shaharei b'Gemara Seinim b'Vor, because the Gemara says, Ki kesheba Haman laharkivis Mordechai alasus. And this is one of those typical Talmudic discussions, Midrashic discussions, where you're like, come on, did this really happen? But it's meant to teach us something, as we discussed our conversation about Medrash a number of weeks ago. So Haman is instructed by the king, Kach es elvush v'esasus kasher dibarta, v'aseken leMordechai Yehudi osher b'shar hamelech al tapel dav mikol asher dibarta. He says, don't leave out anything. You have to take the sus, you have to take the royal limousine, you have to take the entourage, you have to take everything, you have to take him around. So Haman, begrudgingly, he has to go, he has to listen to the king. So he comes to Mordechai, and Asak Mordechai believed Hilchos Kmitzas Minchas HaOmer. What was Mordechai doing, the Gemara says? He was learning the sugya of how you take the Omer. There's a certain way you had to grab the Omer, so what's called Kmitza. certain types of fingers and where you grabbed it and how you hold it, etc. V'haman atzma hoda ki bo hakomet shelachem v'doches aseret alafim kikara kesef shenasati lachashverosh kedei lahargechem. And Haman, in his wisdom or in his, tongue in cheek, says, your little grabbing, your little like shmektabak of Omer was more powerful that it was able to overrule the 10,000 coins, silver coins that I gave to Achashverosh that I could kill you. Because we're told that that's how much he paid him so that he could pass this decree. Al oldo zman kiyum sudas zecher lasudas Esther, yesh omrim ki roy la'acharad ha'erev. So when to do this meal, this special meal, according to the Yavitz, you would have to learn it. And when would you have this special meal? He says this, and when it's called the Suda in memory of the Suda of Esther, some say that it's best to do it until the evening, Ad HaErev. And he quotes the source. Acherim kasvu, k'miyacha sheyesh laniach shesuda Esther haisa b'shachris k'derech hamalachim yesh lechlas suda baboker. Some say no. Maybe it's better to have it in the morning because if you have a special meal and the meal of the kings, and the Gemara discusses the meal of kings, derech hamalachim, you should have it in the morning. Yesh meirim. However, some raise the point. Ki kasher lahaniach shesuda haisa baboker. Achar shehaman. Some say no, it couldn't be that the meal is in the morning because Haman had to go and he had to go fetch Mordechai and he had to go back and then L'saper Seros Alerachto and then he had to go cut his hair and he had to take a bath. And he had to switch him out of the of the sackcloth, etc. And he had to take him through the streets and he had to make the whole declaration. This is how a king wants to honor somebody. And he had to go back home. So therefore, it's unlikely that it took place in the morning because so much had to take place before that. He says, therefore, it makes more sense that if you're going to have the meal when Esther's meal was in the evening, in the afternoon towards the evening. He says that people have a custom that on the morning of the second day of Pesach, they would eat basar yavesh, dry meat, a chashev, in other words, a nice piece of dry meat. V'nikra b'lashon Ashkenaz Haman, and in Ashkenaz in Germany they would call it Haman Zechel Tlias Haman B'Tezayim B'Nisan. So maybe it was like beef jerky or something. I don't know. That's, by the way, think about it. There are not so many options on Pesach what you could have, and you wanted to have something to commemorate this. So then, yeah. We're very graphic when it comes to Arby. Ask your brother when he makes his charcuterie boards if this is.
Yeah, I understand that, but still.
Okay, so they would have this a nice piece of flesh, and they would call this, this is the Haman flesh, because he was hanged. Hachasam Sofer, Achal Gamhu Basar Lashon Miyovesh. He would have tongue, miyuvash, like tongue, dried tongue. Now, okay. There's two types of people in the world. The people that eat tongue, and then there's the rest of the world. Okay. I am not from the tongue eaters, but some people like it. Some people can, especially when they would have on Parshas Vayera. They would always eat tongue in Parshas Vayera because the Malachim came and it says that Avraham served them l'shonos imchardal. They served tongue with mustard. Not for me. I'd rather eat tofu maybe. So some say that he would have, again, a special meat that he would have on this day, again, but it's because of the Suda of Esther Malka. He says it's interesting to note he says that in Germany they would have old meat that was sort of like kept and smoked until dried. People like they take salamis and the hanging salamis all over the place, and they until it's just the right amount of dryness. I don't have that kind of patience. But but why meat that's hanging? Because like Haman, who was hanging from the gallows, that we have this special hanging meat that we would have on Pesach.
When about is this being written?
Is it what?
When about is this being written?
When he writes that this, I don't know, I could look it up, but when you look at
who, if I already stopped you, who's writing all this?
This is Rav Schulzinger, who's the Rav in Gilo right now.
Okay. Thanks.
I think he's still living, yeah. But he brings all these. But these, when you talk about an old German custom, you're talking probably, after the Middle Ages, like post Rashi, When we start recording these types, not period of Rishonim, but probably like the early Acharonim. There's still Jews were in Germany, and it was it was amazing. When we talk about Chachmei Ashkenaz, the sources that we have as Ashkenaz Jews, this is where it comes from, and he just concludes. Yesh mechatzeros admarim shenoga b'suda anerecham b'yom zeh l'shir mishirei Purim. And some have the custom that they'll sing actually Purim songs, and they'll say Purim Torah on this day. I don't know about you, that's like pretty wild that on Pesach we're thinking about Purim. But it's just another way, if you look at the psukim that we have, our psukim is that Vayishbos Haman Mimacharas. So we are learning, of course, about the actual man that fell from heaven, that stopped, and as a result of Moshe Rabbeinu dying and how they had to make do those last few days, those last few weeks. But if we look at the Gemara and we incorporate the fact that actually the story of Purim took place on Pesach, we always lose sight of that. We do, but that's a bona fide fact. The story of Purim, the crux of it took place on Pesach. So it makes sense that on Pesach we should have some sort of Purim observance. So it's hinted at in the Haftorah because it says, "Oh, Vayishbos Haman Me'macharas." On the first day of Pesach, we're saying, by the way, tomorrow's the day that Haman stops. People have the custom of having sort of hanging foods or something like that. So if you have one of your hanging salamis, it'll be a nice, like, cute thing. Like, why is this salami different from all salamis? Because or you have a conversation. What is the connection between Pesach and Purim? Really, really interesting. So just another indication of, if we looked at the calendar a number of weeks ago, of how intertwined the calendar and the holidays are and how they have to do with one another. So here we have a connection between Purim and Pesach because the Torah, the Megillah tells us that it took place. So maybe this year on the second day of Pesach, we should have, I'll have a special kiddush, something like that. Again, no hamatash, and there's not so much good, but because I guess the meat comes about because what else are you going to eat? Not so much. But anyway, we have, I just came across this. I said, you know what, I could not share this because it's so fascinating. That what?
Can you share the PDF that you just?
Yeah. I'm going to send it when I send the recording. So, okay. But this is like Dafka. Like I read it again. There's nothing. There's as Lazer Rothenberg always says. There's no coincidence. No such thing as a coincidence. It's just Hashem waving hello. So the fact that we're up to mamish this pasuk, and this is the piece that I just out of nowhere decided to read. I said obviously Hashem was waving hello in a very, very big way. So hope everybody stays warm today. I hope the tacos come out great. And obviously next week is Purim, so we're not going to meet next week. We'll resume, God willing, the week after Purim. And wish everybody Chag Sameach. It should be great. So Nina, great to see you.
Yes.
Welcome. I don't say welcome home. I say welcome back. Oh, and I was just looking at your picture on the wall in school. I hope you have a chance to go see it.
Yes, we actually have a plaque also here.
You have to go. Have you seen the actual
plaque? But I'm hoping to go see it. Also, the whole wall.
Go see it. It's really, really cool. It's super inspiring. There was an alumni game. Hockey game, girls and boys, not together. Chas v'shalom, might lead to dancing. But while we were with our kids, so we showed them the wall. It was really something. So you make us proud. It was really good. So all right. So have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.